I'm very glad to finally get here. I've been curious about CC Hub for a while, but wherever there is a lot of thinking and energy and a sense of adventure, that's a place I like to be. Because I think life is about trying new things, about challenging status quo, about changing the norm. It's the only way you find out new, interesting, and great things. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but who cares? I always say if you stand at the edge of the cliff and what you're seeking is down there, you're never going to know except you jump. What's the worst thing that can happen? You break a leg. So what? You get up, fix the leg, or hobble along, and go and do something new. So this feels like a place where there is a lot of that kind of energy. And for me, personally, I believe that there are few countries that have what Nigeria has in terms of the energy, the sense of adventure, the innate capacity to seek to make something happen, the drive and the push to create something out of nothing. If you consider, I always think about when I started business, and I was 25 going on 26, everything was difficult. There were no microfinance banks. There was no SME financing of any sort. There was no SMEDAN or any kind of organization that was focused on raising entrepreneurs. The word didn't even sort of exist in this part of the world. So there was nothing to incentivize you as a young person that graduated in the 80s to want to set up something on your own. And yet I look around and some of the great stories that you see today were created by young Nigerians within that space. A lot of the banks outside of, First Bank is the oldest bank in the country. 122 years old and still kicking. And it's great to be the first female or the youngest chairman they've ever had. At 53, I took over from a 74-year-old man. But the guys who created what you call the new generation banks were all in their 30s, most of them, when the banks were. And it was within difficult things. But simply by a policy change that was made by the government then, it allowed new players to get in to what was a traditional, conservative, closed industry. And if you look through the landscape, you would see that they have made a difference because they have challenged the traditional institutions to get up and get things done differently and get things done in a different way that creates value. So that is the power and the influence of opening up spaces for things to be thought about differently. Because you see, when you want to change a space, it comes in different ways. It's about how you think what has always been done. It's not always about new things. It can be about things that have been done for generations, but just choosing to approach it differently. When I think about Nigeria and what we need to do in terms of creating the kind of social change that will bring not just social, but serious economic change to our country. Because you see, you can take social as a welfarist word and hang it there. But that's not it, because when I thought about your topic, I thought, okay, by putting social in the dynamics of this, it becomes, you can get confused as to where to take it to. But by smartly saying make a business case, you've tied the two scenarios together. So you're saying, let's change the way things are done in order to create an economic impact in the country. Assume that's what's behind your mind. The reality is, where we are now, look at our country and look at the things we have and list the things that represent assets to us. We have a large body count. So that can be good and it can be bad. So if you have a large population and you don't know what to do with it, you'd have a major liability in terms of how you're going to feed them, how you're going to clothe them, how you're going to keep them healthy, how you're going to provide all the needs. Ultimately, having so many people means you need to have so many roads to open up, many houses must be built, many things must be provided for. And if those people are not processed in a way that they become economic assets, which means that each single person is an economic contributor, not an economic consumer of the nation, then they become assets, because the additive value that is created by each person is what becomes the aggregate value of the nation. But on the other hand, if you manage to use your resources to create at least an average educational system that activates the minds of your people to be deployed in a way that they themselves become the engine that creates different values across different spaces. And I'm not talking about university degrees, because we all get confused once we talk about education. There are many people that went through the four walls of a university that are not educated, frankly, because when you talk to them, they have not applied themselves to knowledge in a way that the knowledge that they have can create value. And there are guys that didn't even finish O-levels, maybe because of a misfortune or something in their family, but who have developed themselves by self-education and application to an area of opportunity that they have found. And through the application of their talents and their limited resources, they have ultimately created value for the nation. So if, in essence, we create a system that allows our people to become assets rather than liabilities, for everyone to be part of what delivers a drop of water into the economic pot of the nation, to let every mind have the capacity to look at one challenge, one situation, one problem in the country, and be the one that seeks, either singly or collaboratively, to find the solution for the segment of the problem that they have identified and they have a natural affinity for. Then ultimately we turn all our people to assets for our country. And then you look at the fact that we have such a massive youthful population. I mean, how many countries can boast of 65% of its population being under 40? That is the economic engine of any nation. Your mind is open. You're more receptive to new things. You're receptive to change and to knowledge. You are the engine, you should be the engine of change in itself. How do we change the process that makes young people come out thinking, I've graduated for 7 years, for 8 years, I haven't found a job. What are you doing? Why would you waste 7, 8 years of your life waiting for anybody to give you a job? If the job does not exist, create it. If nothing gives you what you want, create what you want out of whatever is available. Destroying the sense of entitlement to the point that your mind is challenged to having a sense of self-responsibility with a commitment to being the change and not waiting to be changed. It's really how we are going to change our country. Owning process, understanding that this is your country. You're not a tenant in Nigeria. Nobody has given you a visa to be in Nigeria. You have a right, a legitimate right. The Constitution of Nigeria gives you every right. As a natural born Nigerian in Nigeria. And what the entity called Nigeria turns out to be is what you have to deal with as someone that lives in it. Waiting for somebody else to change Nigeria into what you want it to be is a misnomer. Understanding that the guys who got us to where we are and the guys who might be taking us to where we don't want to be have fewer years to live in Nigeria than you do. If we just take age. But you have a responsibility to be involved in the process of the change that delivers to you the country that you want and the country that you want to hand over to your children. And you know, the way I always look at things is, this is how it is. This is what I think I can do. The challenge is, don't wait for anybody else to do what you know is right to do, to take the system, a business, a space, an economic activity, a social change activity, to take it to where you want it to be. What you need to do is to get started chipping at the block of what you despise, a little at a time, until we can achieve what you want. One thing I've learned in my 28 years of life, of business, and 53 years of life, is when you believe in something enough and you're convinced that something should be done and everybody else is still faffing around, so to speak, you get started with it whatever little way that you can, whether it's business, whether it's whatever. This is how I have ruled my life. Once you start, you've got an audience. There are people watching what you're doing. Somewhere along the line, one person is going to say, oh, I like what you're doing. Can I join forces with you to take this further? Now there are two, not one. A few meters down the line, there are 3 people that have joined up with you. So now there are 4 of you. There are 5 of you, 2 plus 3. And before you know it, you have an army of people. When I had concerns for employability and enterprise development in Nigeria, I invited some people around my dining table in my house. And we had a meeting about setting up After School Graduate Development Center, AGDC. It looked like madness. It looked like, I mean, how many millions of people are out there? No jobs, no this. How are you even going to affect this at all? But I didn't care, and I never care. Ultimately, we got this thing started. It looked like nothing was happening for a while. It's 7 years down the line. I can count the tens of thousands of lives that have been directly impacted. On the 20th of July, AGDC Bank of Industry, working with the Office of the Vice President, will launch a 1 million new entrepreneurs project. When I first started talking about 1 million new entrepreneurs, 1 million, I'm like, yes. We have a problem. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 is not going to cut it. If we don't set a big ambition and a challenge that we can use to push the market, if 500,000 of them fail, we will have 500,000 new entrepreneurs. If they all employ 2 people, that would be 1 million new employees. A company that employs 2, within 2-3 years can change to a company that employs 5. If you multiply the numbers, we will arrive at creating, there's no way you're going to create millions of jobs overnight. The entire stock exchange, representing how much in terms of capital, employs only about 300,000 people. Go and check the numbers. First Bank is the largest employer of labor in the financial services sector. And we employ less than 20,000 people. The next person does not employ 10. Why? We are in the days where technology is a major resource for development, but it's also a major disruptive factor. The efficiency that technology brings to businesses, especially in the productive sector, eliminates body counts. I sit on the board of one of the FMCGs, and in one day, by installing a new efficient system of producing one of the products, eliminated. That's just one. The factory that produces your iPhone, your iPad, or something in China, in order to save itself issues of labor, paying under wage, and all of those labor issues, set up a factory that eliminated 1 million jobs by using robots. If you go into like the UK and you walk into like a Barclays Bank branch, you're not likely to find more than 3 or 4 people now. Why? There's an ATM-like thing that collects your money, gives you processes, you make your transfers, you do everything, you do it all yourself. You can make your deposit, you can do this, you can do that. You can check your balances, you can print your account. There's only one teller sitting in the corner for major transactions that involve businesses and all of that. There are 1 or 2 people with iPads standing, just in case you want to make an appointment to see the person talking about mortgage or any of those other products that they want to sell to you, or to direct you to any of the machines and stuff like that. The average Nigerian bank branch run with about 15 people. What, is that something for me to stop? Okay, just so I know. But that's the future and it's coming. What does that tell us? As jobs are eliminated due to it means that new businesses must, as a necessity, be created. Because what do we do with the human beings? Even if we achieve the efficiency and we achieve the economic results, how do we engage the minds of men if we do not create avenues and opportunities for human beings to be busy? That's one side of it. History seems like a mundane thing. But guess, for us as a country right now, it's something we must find a way to communicate. Most young people don't even know the history of Nigeria. Why? We don't teach history in our schools anymore. And most people don't understand the interconnectivity of the different, what used to be called kingdoms, of Nigerian kingdoms. But the bottom line is, if if you understand history, even as it tells you that we were separate and were combined under a nation, the key thing is communities don't remain the same for generations. Societies change, things happen. So we came from Yoruba kingdom, Igbo kingdom, Bini kingdom, whatever, and I don't care. But here we are. We are already a nation. We have been for 50-something years, for 53 years. The whole of Europe probably didn't sleep last night because everybody is anxious about what the British will do. Why? Because the power of a 500 million people market is different from the power of a 60 million or 60-something million people market that Britain represents. The power, that which drove them to unify, has empowered them. Oh, they have their problems. There's no system that is perfect. America is supposed to be the biggest democracy in the world. Well, if it turns up a Trump, you can see the problem. So there are no perfect systems. But the reality is, here we are. In this room, there are God knows how many tribes represented. So who really cares about your little tribe? Okay, so I'm of Yoruba descent, but I'm a Nigerian. So you're Igbo descent, you're a Nigerian. You're Hausa descent, who cares? You're a Yoruba, you're this, you're that. Good for you. As at the last listing, there are 370-something Nigerian tribes identified. Can you make 370 nations out of those tribes? Will they even count? Will anybody recognize them or deal with them? Look at some of the smallest nations. I mean, Luxembourg is a rich man's playground, but so what? That's probably all. What is their influence or their power to influence in the rest of the world? When you talk about attracting investment into Nigeria, part of the attraction is the body count, the market that we represent, and the youthful viral population that is emerging. Why do we want to stick to a past that had its part, had its glory, but cannot support the future that we need in the competitiveness of today? You know, I always say to young people, don't ever sit down waiting to inherit your father's loot. You know why? Your father's house, no matter how big it is now, might just be a boys' quarters when your own mates are building houses. Why? Generations change. You are only competitive if you are competing in your own generation at the pace of your generation. Those things that were lying look, have you seen a man? I used to be an athlete at school, and I went to Methodist Girls High School here. Yeah, I still used to be an athlete at Ife, actually. Have you seen a man set to run in the 100 meters who can ever win by turning back in the course of the race? The past is your training ground, is your preparation. The times you fell, the times you failed, the times you missed your step, the lessons you learned from them, the things you took from there. But all of it is only valuable if you add it to the experience of the 9, 10, whatever seconds it takes you to finish the 100 meters race. If you waste any part of that to look back, you can be sure that somebody else would have passed you by the time you turn back and you turn forward. We must let our past remind us of where we have come from, but we must never let it hold us back from where we must go. To continue to allow the past to be the one that determines our future. It should be a guide. There should be lessons taken from there. But our future does not have to look like our past. The fact that our tribe served us at a time and a season, that's great. If the person that knows what I need is an Igbo man and is a Nigerian, why do I care where he comes from? Because together we can create value. If I'm working on a major research to find solution to a major problem for Nigeria, should I first ask the people who apply to be part of it, who have the capacity, where they come from? When I'm looking for a teacher to teach my child to help him excel at his WAEC, must I check his tribe first? Or when I have a medical situation and I need the best doctor, how does the tribe of the man count? United we stand, divided we do what? We fall. The destruction of this political ploy by the politicians. When you divide a nation into sections, you get to rule a section, and you use the section that you rule to negotiate power. That's what the politicians do. And we are foolish enough to buy into it. Your generation is the energy that drives something for or against. If you determine that we will work together, you come to a place like CC Hub as a cluster. You're all thinking together. If your idea on its own cannot succeed, and the guy working in the cubicle 3 doors away is from Ibibio, and he has another partial knowledge, and some guy from Igala is in another corner, and if you take the 3 of you, merging your ideas together to achieve the results that will change the world, would you step back because of your tribes? Or if you happen to work together, would you title the project Yoruba man, Igbo man, Igala man's project? Wouldn't it just suffice to say a Nigerian team solved this problem? There are many areas of our lives and our society that we need to change things drastically. Yesterday and today, I'm teaching a master class in entrepreneurship at AGDC. And yesterday there was a doctor in the class who said to me, I resigned my job in April because I've been a doctor for I've been working for the last 20 years, and I just wanted some time away to think of how to do this differently. And she wanted to know how she could democratize health services and take the best health service to the poorest neighborhoods and yet make it economically viable. You need to think differently to do that. You need to think differently to take good education into villages and communities where they can't afford to pay for where those kind of education are available and affordable. You need to change the way we do things or change our country by looking at the challenges that face us as a nation, looking at those things that will affect the lives of so many people, and applying your knowledge, whether technology or otherwise, breaking this process as it is now, breaking it down, rethinking it and rebuilding it in a way that you can then take back and deliver to the populace what is needed in the form they can afford it. And yet you can change the lives of a whole community, and by inductive effect, change the life of a nation. Many things that we do right now cannot take us to where we want to go to. The way we do many things that we do cannot take us to where we want to go. They're two different things, what we do and the way we do it. The challenge is for you to have the courage to change it. The challenge is for you to have the courage to challenge status quo, to be willing to be mocked and laughed at when you start, to be willing to be different in order to pursue an idea. It doesn't matter if it really does make sense at the beginning. It doesn't have to. It didn't make sense for a 20-something-year-old girl that could go and work in a bank to decide to go into manufacturing when I did. There are times I told me I was stupid. But it turned out I was right. Because as much as I initially, like the young lady who introduced me said, I went through a whole phase of trying to really determine what I wanted to be. But every time I got to what I didn't want to be, I moved. I didn't wait there. Because if I don't know where I'm going, at least know where I'm not going. So if I get here and I say, this is not where I'm going, I move. Even furniture was meant to be transit. I wanted to keep myself busy. Shortly after Youth Corps, whilst I was trying to get a bank job, I only lasted 3.5 months in that furniture company. It was enough to show me that when I was in secondary school and I thought about being an architect, that there was credence to that thought. And that I did love design and creativity and all of that, but I hated that company because of their value system. And not liking the way they did things was enough for me to say, I can do this and do it differently with different sets of values. And that was what led me to set up my company. People always ask me, did you not think about failing? What's failure? It's nothing. So you fail, so what? I don't want to know a man who's never failed before, because he has nothing to give me. My failure represents stripes like a military general. The lessons I have learned, which is what I can share. Someone who has dared to try to tread in places nobody has is the one that would discover what nobody has discovered. We have a nation that is seeking courage. We have a people that must be willing to change the status quo and change the social order and change the way things are done in order for us to receive the true change that we want. I think we're on a journey. We started something. At least now, you'll be afraid to steal some money, because you never quite know who is going to turn up tomorrow and come and hunt you. But that's not enough. And it's not about government. There are more people than the people in government. It's about the citizens owning the process. It's about you and I owning the change. It's about you taking one part of our life, in one community, in one space, and being the one that turns it upside down. Let them shout, doesn't matter. Keep at it. Soon enough, you'll find a few people that will join you. After a while, it will make sense. But never be afraid to seek to change things, because what we have always known, how it's always been done, this is the way it must be done, this is what is acceptable, doesn't always mean that is the best and the most sustainable way, or the best and the most sustainable thing for the time and the season that we're in. It's a changing world. It never stops. So we can't afford to be tied to the past. The next time someone gives you a form, when they put state of origin, cancel it and write state of residence. When they ask you who you are, put Nigerian. Why? Until we own our problems together, we won't attempt to deploy all our resources together to solve it. We will continue to allow people to use things that don't count to blind us from the real things that count. It counts that we must be able to educate all our people so they can be assets to the country. It counts that we must be able to grow food to feed all our people by using all knowledge and technology and everything that is available to change the way things are done. It must count that every Nigerian, there's no Nigerian should die from malaria or something silly or stupid. That no woman should die from having a baby. That many simple, ordinary things that is destroying. 2 weeks ago, I went to visit a home. Was PBO home in Ilukweju? Not Ilukweju. In, I don't know, by Anthony somewhere. And it was such a heartbreaking experience to see many 13-year-old girls that had been raped and that were pregnant. And the home was keeping them to help them through. They were 13. The oldest person there was 16. There was a beautiful, tall, young girl whose ambition is to be a model. And she looks the part. But she's this pregnant. She's 13. 13? At 13, what did I know? But we're distracted. Do you know the way our people think? If the person who raped the girl is the stepfather of the girl, they will never allow him to be prosecuted. Even the mother will not, in some cases. We're caught in the things we call tradition, culture, or the ways our people do things, or the things we must protect. We're protecting the wrong things to destroy the right things. We need to change across the point, all spheres. Ultimately, once we cause the right change, it will translate into true economic change, because all our people will be unleashed upon the world to create value for our great nation. I challenge you to be the difference. Whatever space, you all have talents, and you have the ability and the capacity to mobilize resources and talents to cause change in different areas. We do need it. God bless you.